The following program is a Town of Colonie television production of the William K. Sanford Town Library.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round again, the years keep rolling by.
Well, in recent years especially, I have expanded my repertoire for the programs that I offer to schools. Mm-hmm. And one of them is origami. And of course, you know origami is the art of paper folding that originated in my old country. I have made each of you a paper rose. Love to.
Do you want the pink rose or the yellow rose?
Or yellow?
Well, pink, I'd like the yellow. Yellow is
I'll have the pink because it goes with my shirt.
Yes.
It really is a nice thing.
You did this out of one piece of paper?
Yeah. Origami and storytelling, in my mind, have a lot in common because they are both arts and craft. There's a great deal of skills involved, but yet anyone can do it. I was working at a school last year, and it just happened to be that this famous American origami master named Michael LaFosse was working at the same school for a different grade. And I was so, we had met before, and he remembered me, and I was so flattered. He was such a sweet person. And I said, I teach origami too, but you're the master. And he said, that doesn't matter. Origami, you know one, you teach one. And that makes you an expert. And he actually taught me how to make this lovely, what we call triangular bipyramid, and right then and there. And I was very, very impressed. Also, origami allows you to use your imagination, just like storytelling requires you to use your imagination. So I wanted to share with you and the viewers a couple of what we call origami stories. And you are going to...
I'm going to do orange.
Try it with me, right? Okay. So this is the easiest origami story that I know. And it goes like this. When I was a little girl growing up in Osaka, Japan, my grandmother was the oldest person I knew. In fact, she was so old, no one knew how old she was, not even herself. So one day I asked my grandma, "Grandma, how old are you?" And she said, "I am as old as a mountain." So we are going to look at the white side of the paper, find the one corner, find the opposite corner, put them together to make a mountain. Then I decided to switch my question. I said, "Grandma, how did you get to become so old? What is the secret to a long life?" And my grandma said, "In order to live a long life, I do 3 things every day. First, I hug someone I love every day." So we're going to take this sharp corner at the bottom of the mountain and bring it over to the middle of the other side of the mountain right here to make the paper hug itself like this. Then we're going to take this other sharp corner and bring it to this corner you just created by folding, like this, to create a cupcake shape or a pentagon. So the paper looks like it's hugging itself. Then my grandma said, the second thing I do every day is I bow to someone to say thanks, because in Japan we bow. So my grandma and I bow to each other. Then we're going to take the tip of this cupcake, there are 2 pieces, we're going to take just one and make it bow so that you will see the white part. Then flip it over and take the other top of the cupcake, make it bow the other way so that you will continue to see the white part. And now you have a trapezoid shape or a bucket shape. Then my grandma said, the third thing I do every day is I drink a cup of tea. Now you notice that you've made a little teacup. And my grandma and I shared a cup of tea. So you see, those are the secrets to a long life. In order to live to be as old as a mountain, you must hug someone every day, you must bow to someone to say thanks, and you must drink a cup of tea every day. And that's the end of that one.
Oh, I love it.
When I was a little girl, growing up in Japan, one day it was raining outside. And so I had to stay in the house, but there was nothing for me to do, and I was bored out of my mind. So I asked my mother, Mommy, I'm so bored, what should I do? And my mother gave me this piece of paper and said, here, why don't you amuse yourself with this? I said, well, what am I supposed to do with a piece of paper? But she did not even answer me because she was too busy taking care of my baby brother. So I folded the paper in half. Then I folded it again in half so that it would look like a book. Then I opened it just once, and knowing that this book was open at the bottom and closed at the top, I started from the top corner, sort of like folding a paper airplane. Start from this other corner, using the center line, until I made a house with a big roof. Then, still knowing that this house was open at the bottom, I picked one piece at the bottom and folded it up like this. Then I flipped it over and grabbed the other side and folded up like this. And that way I made myself a little rain hat. And I put it on my head and I walked outside the house anyway. And I walked down the street and walked down the street until it stopped raining. So I took the hat off my head and I opened it and opened it until I could not open it anymore. And I had a diamond shape. Diamond is a girl's best friend. Who said that? Marilyn Monroe did. Mm-hmm. But that's only for people, girls who don't have real friends. Well, noticing that this part was a little bit messy, I tucked one under the other to make it flat. Then I flipped it over, tucked one inside, underneath the other side to make it flat. Then I grabbed the bottom of this diamond shape, just one piece, and folded up like this. Then I flipped it over, did the same thing on the other side, until I made myself a little sun hat. Then I put it on my head and I went down the street until I came to a great big river. You see, I wanted to cross the river, but there was no bridge in sight. I said, oh, I wish I had a boat or something. So I took my sun hat off my head. I opened it and opened it until I could not open anymore, and I made myself another diamond shape. Now, noticing that this diamond is a little bit open at the top, I pulled it apart to make a boat. Then I got inside the boat and went down the river. Okay? But the problem was, I had no idea how to steer a boat. I had never done it before. Plus, the water was high because of the rain, so pretty soon I lost control, and the front end of the boat hit a big rock on the shore. And the front end of the boat broke off. Oh no, I tried to back up, but then the other end of the boat hit a big tree on the other side of the shore, and the back end of the boat broke off. I said, oh no, and I tried to steady myself, but the boat hit a big rock at the bottom, and this part at the bottom of the boat broke off. Then I started to sink and the water started pouring into the boat. I said, oh no, this is the end of my life. I should have stayed home and listened to my mother. As I sank to the bottom of the river. But guess what? I came out okay because I was wearing a life jacket. And that's the end of that one.
Well, I'd like to start because I'd like to tell you about my 5th grade peacekeeping class that I'm starting. Yes, this is will be my 4th year in the 5th grade at a certain school where I'm developing this series of peacemaking stories, and this is my lead-off story for that course. All right, this is called Slugadog, and it was collected by Verna Ardema. And she tells that in a book called Tales from the Story Hat. All right. Once there was a rich man. Now, this particular rich man had gotten rich by cheating. He took advantage of everybody in any business deal and just stayed on this side of the law. But because he was so cutthroat, he didn't have any friends. But he was very rich. And he lived, as most people in the Congo did, which is where this story is from, in a family compound of huts. There was a hut for him, a hut for each of his wives and her children, and there were many wives, so there were many huts. And then there were a few huts for the servants, and huts for cooking, and huts for storing things, grain and dried meat and fish and pumpkins and gourds, and a hut for the tools, and a hut for fixing things, and a hut for the accounting, many huts. And this is where you see how rich he was. The whole compound was surrounded by an ivory fence. Now, this rich man loved to eat. Every day about 4 o'clock, he would come out and sit under this tree that grew near the gate of his ivory fence. And the wives would come parading out of the cooking hut, each one with a pot, a basket, a platter, a dish of something on her head. And they would bring it over and they would set it down before him. And then they would back up and kneel and watch as he ate. He didn't share with them. He didn't share with the children. He didn't have any friends, so he never had any visitors. He always ate alone. And then, when he was done, the wives and the children and the servants could have the leftovers. Now, this one particular day, the wives were bringing out of the cooking hut baked elephant's foot and rice balls with peri-peri pepper sauce and fried locusts. And I don't know if you know this, but baked elephant foot smells delicious. And the smell of this wonderful, delicious food wafted up over that ivory fence and out into the town. Now, at just that moment, a dog, Slugadog, was coming into town, and the smell of that elephant's foot, baked elephant's foot, hit his nose. Now, he was very hungry. He had just passed through several days of the hungry country, where deserty, he hadn't found anything to eat. He was seriously hungry. And when this smell hit his nose, it drew him like a magnet. He followed the smell of that food until his nose was pressed through the bars of that ivory gate. Ooh, there was the man with all that food. Slugadog couldn't help it. He was drooling and he was wagging his tail. He was a very polite dog. Nobody paid attention to him, so he began to ask very politely for the food. There he stood, drooling, wagging his tail, and whining just a little, very politely, until the man looked up. Oh, look at that nuisance of a dog. Wife, get rid of that dog. And so the wife got up and she shooed away the dog. Well, Slugadog that night went through the town looking for food in the trash, but the people in that town were very frugal. There was not much food in the trash. So the next day, he was still very hungry. When out of the cooking hut, the wives brought fried fish and baked pumpkin and all kinds of good food, and the smell wafted through the town and drew Slugadog until he stood with his nose pressed through the bars of that ivory gate, drooling and wagging his tail and whining. Ah! Said the man, wife, get rid of that dog. And wife number 2 got up and she shooed away Slugadog. And the next day also, he was having yam and snake stew and all kinds of good things. Drooling, wagging his tail, whining. Well, finally, one day, after several days of this, the rich man got a length of rope. And when Slugadog came back to the gate, he opened the gate. Slugadog came in, and the man wrapped the rope around his neck and dragged him off to the town elders. "Arrest this dog," he said. "Arrest the dog," said the town elders. "Why?" "He's been stealing the aroma of my food. I demand a trial." Well, the town elders weren't at all sure about this, but in that town, if you demanded a trial, you got a trial. So they sent for the judge. Well, it took a few days for the judge to arrive. Finally, he came and he sat under the tree of justice. There was the tree, the judge, the town elders, the rich man, Slugadog, and a lot of the people in the town, because they had by now all heard about this strange case. And I have to tell you, they were mostly on the side of the dog because a lot of them had been cheated by the rich man. Well, the judge now, he wasn't taking sides because he knew it was his job as a judge to be impartial and listen very carefully. And so the rich man explained how the dog had been coming to steal the aroma of his food. Slugadog could only say, Well, the judge thought a while, then he said, "It's clear to me that the dog is guilty. He wasn't just walking by and happened to smell the food. No, he came every day on purpose to stand there and smell the food. He's guilty of stealing." Now, if he had just stolen once, the answer would be easy. We would just throw him out of town the way we throw out anyone who has stolen. But he came every day. He has stolen often. This is going to have to be a special punishment. I'll need time to think about it. Come back tomorrow. So the people left. The next morning, there they are. The judge under the tree. Oh, there they are. The people, the rich man, Slugadog, the elders, no judge. They're waiting and waiting for the judge. Finally, here he comes, riding on a horse. Now, a horse was very unusual in this part of the world. They said, "Judge, why are you riding a horse?" "Oh," he said, "just because." And he got off the horse and he came and he sat down under the tree. The punishment, he said, will be as follows. "The accuser," and he pointed to the rich man, "shall beat the accused," and he pointed to the dog, "until he is dead." The crowd gasped. Slugadog cowered. The rich man smiled and he picked up a stick. "Now wait," said the judge. "The crime and the punishment have to match. Everyone," and he's speaking now to the crowd, "do you agree that the aroma is the spirit of the food?" "Yes," said the people, "you could say that. The aroma is the spirit of the food." "And," said the judge, "do you say that the spirit of the dog is what must then be punished?" "Well, yes, yes," said the people. "And," said the judge, "would you say that the spirit of the dog resides in his shadow?" "Yes," said the people, "yes, the spirit of the dog could be represented by his shadow." The judge said, "So it is the shadow of the dog that must be punished. You," and he pointed to the rich man, "must beat the shadow of the dog until it is dead. But you must not touch the dog. We will agree that the shadow is dead when the sun is straight overhead and you can see no shadow." The sun was low in the sky. It was early in the morning, and the shadow was long, and the rich man had to begin to beat that shadow. Now, he wasn't used to physical labor. He got very tired, very hot. He began to sweat. Every time he hit the ground, little puffs of dirt came up and stuck to the sweat. He got dirty, and as the sun got higher and higher, the shadow got smaller and smaller until he had to put his arm next to the dog so he wouldn't hit the dog. And then, he struck his own arm. In a rage, he threw down the stick and he stomped through the crowd and he jumped on the judge's horse and he galloped off on the street that led out of town. "Where's he going?" said the people. "I don't know," said one of the elders, "but I don't think he'll be back, because if he came back, we would have to throw him out of town for stealing the judge's horse." And that is the end of the story.
I want to take a piece from one of my longer pieces. So you're going to be a little disappointed because it's not going to go to the end. And you can blame Joe and Kate for that.
Take it, we will.
This is from my piece, How I Came to Dowagiac. In the 1800s, a missionary in New York City was working with the poor and wanted to do something to get the children off the streets. There were so many children living on the streets, some of them involved in situations that would eventually end them in jail. And so he started a home for them. But they were always go back to the streets. And when they left him, there was no recourse but living on the streets for so many of them. So he came up with this idea, which was new, but it was also very ancient. All through history, people have sent children somewhere else. The Celts sent their sons to be raised by another member of the family, a prominent person in the tribe. One of the people that came over on the Mayflower was an orphan and was sent with this crew. You go back in many of in Jewish history, in the Bible, you read about these disconnected children that are living with someone else. So this is an ancient practice. So he said, well, why don't we send these New York children to houses out west? They are underpopulated out there. People need help on their farms. Women need help in their houses. We've got all these children. Let's ship them west. And eventually, they went to every continental state and territory in this great country. A lot of them were orphans. Some of them were half orphans. Some of them weren't orphans at all, but under circumstances ended up in orphanages. So some of the stories are very, very sad. Some of them are a little lighter. I tried to go for the lighter ones, but you can't get away from the tragedy. In the West, especially the central states, there are many societies that have learned of their ancestors, this piece of their history, and have started orphan-trained societies. And that's where a lot of my research went, to these, besides New York City, of course, but then getting the stories of some of these people. And they weren't all children, but getting the stories of some of these people that ended up in the western and central parts of the United States. So my first story is a fictionalized main character, but I put her in this situation of this first orphan train out of New York City. The minister, his name was Charles Loring Brace, devised this plan where he would send agents to a town, and there would be placards put up, and they would say, on such and such a date, children are coming from New York City, come gather, take one of them into your homes. And that's what would happen then. These children would come on a train from New York and be taken into someone's family. If they weren't, they then went back to New York, or to try again, or maybe not to try again. Many things happened along the way. Many changes were made. Reverend Brace and his community of people would send an agent out every year to check on the children, see how they're doing. If a child needed to be moved, that happened. So the stories are just, there's thousands of them. By taking a fictionalized character, I'm able to put her into all of the situations, although this never really happened to actually one child. But I do name as many of the children who actually took this trip as I could. The documentation from 1850s is sparse, mostly letters and reports. But I do use a child's name when I can. I do use a child's story, even though I only have a fragment of it, and I use my imagination for the rest of it. So this story's protagonist is Elsie Dowdle, who lives in a moderate income family in New York City, is well loved by her parents, and is an educated young woman. Although she's 10, she reads and writes above her grade level. There has to be a tragedy to be a story from this era. So I won't give you the whole story, but Elsie loses her parents and ends up on the streets. Before the tragedy, she had befriended a little street urchin. And after the tragedy, this little urchin takes Elsie under her wings. So we pick up the story the first morning after Elsie comes to live with Meg. And where Meg lives is a box in an alley with other wooden crates around her, occupied by other children. The tragedy was a fire, and so that when Meg refers to that fire, you'll know where that came from. I woke up with someone shoving me, pushing on my shoulders, saying, come on, you gotta get up, everybody's gone, you wanna eat? I opened my eyes and there was Meg, and I'm wondering, what are you doing in my bedroom? But then I sat up and I hit my head on the wooden box that I had been sleeping in. And I was damp from laying on rags on the ground. And it all came back to me. The fire. And Meg bringing me here. And opening up a rusty tin and bringing out a chunk of moldy bread that I had given to her 3 days ago, sharing my lunch with her. And she broke that in half and gave me half. And I'm sitting there holding this greenish-looking bread. Come on, she said, come on, we gotta go. So I pulled my shoes on and I said, where? Where do we have to go? We gotta go, come on, come on. So I ducked my head and I followed her out of the box, and immediately she went over to a water pipe hanging on the side of a tall building, and there was water dripping out of that pipe. And under the pipe was a broken mug. She put her hand under the pipe and got her drops of water and splashed them on her face. I just looked at her. And then she picked up that mug and got water in it and drank it. My mother used to raise pigeons on our roof. I could not imagine drinking water off a roof. She offered it to me and I said, no, thank you, Meg, I'm fine. She just shrugged her shoulders. Let's go, she said. Later on, I do find a place to get clean water, but not then. She dragged me out into the street, and there were people walking up and down the streets, going places. You could see they all wanted to go someplace, and they had their mind on it. And Meg looked at me, and she said, stay here and watch me. She was going to teach me how to steal. She walked down the street, and she would speed up and slow down, and I'm wondering, why is she doing that? Until I realized that the men who owned shops were coming in and out of their shops to put up their awnings, to bring things out for sale. And she had her eye on one particular man, a grocer, who was bringing out boxes of apples and pears and potatoes. And when he would go into the building, she would speed up, and when he would come out, she'd slow down. Until she got just in front of his shop. He was inside. She grabbed 2 apples, stuck them in her pocket, and ran across the street. And was over there when he came out again, watching him. I'm watching him. I'm watching her. I'm shocked. He made no motion like he knew anything had happened. And so she walked down that side of the street, crossed back over to me, and handed me an apple as she ate hers. I said, Meg, you stole those. And she looked at me with wide eyes like I was telling her it was snowing or something. I can't eat that. You have to go put them back. And the sadness in her eyes told me, you're not getting it, girl. You're not getting it at all. She put the 2 apples in her pocket, the one I wouldn't eat and the one she'd started, shrugged her shoulders and said, come on, we'll try something else. We went to another street where again she said, watch me and learn. And so I stood there, and she went out into the street, and she put out her hand, and she looked at the first man she met and said, penny please, and then put her eyes right back down. And he gave her a penny. She was begging. My parents never told me I couldn't do that. Not that it ever came up before. But I'd try it. And so I walked out onto the street, and she watched me. And I stood right in front of this nice-looking gentleman, and I said, excuse me, sir, good morning. I was wondering if you might have a penny or 2 that you might spare for me. And he looked down at me, and he said, child, do your parents know you're begging? I turned and I ran. And I could hear Meg's footsteps behind me until finally she could grab my coat and stop me. I said, no, I'm not doing that again. I'm not doing that again. And she grabbed my face and she said, you want to eat? And I looked at her. She said, first thing, too many words. Oh, okay. Penny, please. All right, penny, please. And don't look him in the eye. And then she grabbed my shoulder and pulled me down to the ground and smeared my face with mud. You're too clean, she said. Put it on my dress. Now let's go. We went out into the street. Penny, please, don't look him in the eye. Stay dirty. And a man came down the street, and I looked at him, and I put my head down and my hand out. I said, penny, please? And he put a penny in my hand. I looked at it, I looked at her. She went, yes. After about 20 minutes, I had 4 pennies. She had 8. She said, that's enough. Come on. And she grabbed me and she took my pennies. And she took me down an alley. Oh, it smelled wonderful. There was a bakery. Steam was coming out the windows that were open, and it just smelled so good. Meg knocked on the door. And a woman opened the door. She had a white apron on and that was powdery all over it, and her hands were all flour. Oh, Meg, says she. Well, it's so good to be seeing you, girl. Who's your friend? Elsie. And Meg put the money in the woman's hand. The woman said, oh, you've done good today. Now you've done very good. You stay right here. And the woman went in and came out and gave us each a sticky bun. They were a day old, but I guess I might have been the only one to know that. And a half a loaf of bread. We said our thank yous. We ate the sticky buns right then and there. And then Meg said, come on, we've got to save the bread. And we took it back and went into our crate, and under the rags, Meg pulled out the tin, opened it up, and put it in. And that was my introduction to living on the streets.
It goes all my life's a circle, sunrise and sundown. The moon rolls through the nighttime till the daybreak comes around. And all my life's a circle, but I can't tell you why. Seasons spinning round